Hi everybody, I'm John, CEO of Radenso Radar.
And I'm Randy, e-commerce director of Radenso Radar.
And we wanted to take this opportunity to thank everybody who participated and all of the drivers in the Radenso Sports Car Challenge.
Yeah, it's been an exciting season, and we also wanted to thank Kyle and Finian of SimTV for doing the broadcasting and administration of the series, and also a special shout out to Tom O'Gorman for announcing the series.
Definitely. We've really loved to be a part of this so far. There's been a lot of really good, really fast and clean racing. And in conclusion, we wanted to say good luck tonight at Daytona. I know we've got an enduro coming up, so good luck, race clean, and race fast.
If there's one place that defines American motorsport, it's here. The sandy beaches a few miles away held races for decades. It's where NASCAR was born. They need a place to race, a super speedway so fast and so huge that the cars could run flat out all the way around. So they built it. 1 million square yards of earth was moved to create the banking. The void left behind became Lake Lloyd. And 2.5 miles of asphalt created more than just one of the most beautiful racetracks in the world. It built the foundation of NASCAR. In the decades that followed, Daytona became hallowed ground. The trophies here mean more than any other. Win the 500, put your name on the Harley J. Earl Trophy. Win the 24 hours and strap a Rolex on your wrist. The banks are not always kind. They're not always fair. And while Daytona wins bring a statistical highlight to any career, it's the losses that make it seem pointless. But for every untimely ending, there is a triumphant healing. For every emotional victory, a mind-numbing realization. Daytona. I earned a trophy at the World Center of Racing. The checkered flag waved for me. For me, it was not the end of a career. While it may be a highlight, it is only the beginning.
He's barely going to keep it on the racing surface.
I don't know that we'll see a pass here as they go. A deep dive on the brakes. Here comes the 680 to the inside.
By 7,000 on the second. I can't believe what we just saw.
The Radenso Sports Car Challenge has traversed not only the country and the world, but also the calendar year. It's changed a whole lot in the United States and the world in the past couple months since we started our season back at Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. But now it's finally time to round out this 9-round season at the beaches in Daytona. Welcome to SimTV. My name is Kyle Heyer, joined by IMSA race winner Tom O'Gorman, as we venture into our 9th and final round of the season in a 1-hour endurance race with 2 classes going for glory. At the end of the night, we'll crown a class champion in both Grand Sport and TCR and grant them a brand new Radenso XP, as well as credit for our buddies over with Lazy Rocket. Welcome again to Daytona International Speedway. Tom, this is a racetrack that is personal to you. You actually won at this racetrack in a TCR car in 2019. It's been over a year since that amazing day in Daytona Beach, but now we get to take it on in the virtual realm for 1 hour in an endurance setting with almost 30 cars.
And it feels like so long ago that happened for me personally, but also just, as you said, the world has been constantly changing over the series of Radenso Sports Car Challenge, and honestly, the Radenso Sports Car Challenge itself has taken on multiple different faces. We started off with a huge boom in sim racing that actually caused us to have to separate the classes out a little bit. We had so much demand, and then as the world began to open back up, we started to see a drop-off in fields, not in quality of racing though, not by a long shot, and now we are back in conjoined races. Car counts a little bit lower, but the racing has been hotter than ever. I think you and I both know we've gotten off of these races every single night as commentators going, those are the best sim races we've ever watched. And I think we're in for another one tonight because this one is different than the rest we've seen.
I think for sure, again, the endurance round brings something special. But of course, you mentioned how good the racing has been. Think back a few weeks ago to Road America in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin. Some of the best sim racing, as you mentioned, I think that we've ever seen, not only on Sim TV, but period. Such good, competitive, close racing in both Grand Sport and TCR. And tonight we get to do it for one final time this season. We want to take a quick moment to thank our sponsors this season. You heard from the guys at Radenso. We want to give a huge shout out to Rennie Bader Jr. for setting up the sponsorship with Radenso this season. Of course, Radenso offers basically laser and radar detectors for use in your street vehicle when you're on the interstate and trying to keep the police out from behind your mirrors there, Tom. And let me tell you something, they sent us one. I've gotten to use it on some trips over to some grid life events, and it is a spectacular product. Probably saved my butt more than once. So of course, if you're interested in checking out what Radenso has to offer, they've got some AI powered gizmos coming in the near future that should reduce false alerts. Of course, Radenso, a big partner, Sim TV, as well as Lazy Rocket, a vinyl produce manufacturer. Anthony Montello, the brains behind that one. And of course, you can use code SIMTV to get 20% off your vinyl order. And we actually got some stickers from them, and they reside in a couple race cars, and most notably Eric Cattill's 92 Civic Si that he runs in Grid Live Touring Cup. He's got a Lazy Rocket product on there as well. So big shout out to our sponsors that have made this season possible as we head into qualifying here at Daytona. Perhaps this isn't super important tonight, Tom, but I think every driver wants to get themselves on top of the board so they can start out front.
Well, it may not be super important in context of Daytona because it is a very draft-heavy track. There's a lot of flat-out running, but it is important because of the format for the Radenso Sports Car Challenge. There are bonus points on the line in qualifying, and some of these championships are far from over, specifically in TCR, as we watch Andrew Pilato, one of the contenders in TCR, start one of his flyers down into turn number 1 right now in his number 14 car. But looking at that TCR championship, there are 4 drivers mathematically within the running to take the win because tonight is double points. So in typical fashion, we would see about 40 points scored for the race winner. Tonight there are up to 80, and right now it is Eric Mickey at the top, who's kind of been the guy to beat there in the 88 car, based on consistency, not always based on the fastest pace, not always based on the highest finishing position, but he's just been always there. He's got 6 race wins out of 12 starts. He's finished in the top 5 11 times. That's the most top 5s of any driver, and he's got about a 20-point lead on that driver, Andrew Pilato. But Elias Roman is also in this field, and he's mathematically able to catch the championship leaders. There he is in the 99 car, and then Caleb John Lavender is also mathematically in the hunt. I don't think he actually made it tonight, though. So there's going to be 3 drivers contending for the championship in TCR. In GS, though, I'll let you take that one. That one's not quite so up in the air.
Yeah, Paul Darling is currently the points leader in Grand Sport, and he has had a spectacular season. 6 wins to his name. Ken Alseal trails him by 51 points. With only 3 wins. So Darling's won twice as many races as a second place Ken Alseal. Riley Thompson is 81 back from the leader. Then that's Alex Barroso and Kurt Crum rounding out your top 5. For Paul Darling to lose this championship, it's going to take an act of God or a lot of really, really bad luck tonight to take him out of the running. Not mathematically impossible for Ken Alseal to win the championship, but it's going to take a lot of luck on his side and a lot of bad luck on Darling's to make that happen. But for both of them, they've had a really good season, had a lot of close races, including last time out at Road America as well. So first times on the board here, we'll open up the timing and scoring. Fastest lap on the left-hand side of the screen right now belongs to Ken Alseal, 153.7. And also notably some changes to the cars this week. The BMW, a little bit more competitive than it was at Road America. and it didn't have any issues with top speed at Elkhart Lake, but it did have issues with making the corners. And again, this is a top speed heavy racetrack. We should be able to see some pretty close battles. And Thomas Bressi right now, a new entry to the series in the last round of the season, sits second, only 0.3 off of Halseal's time.
Yeah, and just to put a button on the GS Championship, there's a stat here that I've never really noticed before, but it's incidents over the season. And if you want to sum up why the championship looks the way that it looks, Paul Darling has 76 total incident points on the championship. The drivers behind him have 155, 163, 109, and yeah, that may not mean a whole lot because iRacing stacks those incident limits up, every time you drop a tire here or there. But Paul Darling has just been so consistent, so clean, tight, and tidy, and he has a knack for winning these races from the front. He gets to the front, he controls it there. And for him to have well under half the incident limits that the next drivers, Ken Halseal, Riley Thompson, Alex Barroso, have on their tally for the season is really a big kind of tip of the hat to how he's performed. But then, as you said, talking about the new dynamic that we have in GS, we have multi-class, or multi-make racing, I should say, in addition to the multi-class. We introduced the BMW M4 GT4, and since we've last seen the Radenso Sports Car Challenge, the BMW M4 got an update to both its tire compound and the driveline loss that is modeled within that car. So that basically means it's making a little more power and its tires are modified. The Cayman also got a tire modification, and the general consensus is they now kind of drop off at the same rate. The BMW was known for dropping off on its tire a much faster rate. So what that means, especially for today's endurance races, the BMW could be a contender because we've already seen, like you said, it's very fast in a straight line.
So a lot of different storylines heading into the final race of the season, and of course we want to thank one more person, and that is Tom O'Gorman for joining us here every round of the championship. And we weren't quite sure when or if real racing would boot back up, and it has in some ways and has not in others, but glad to have you here, Tom. And it's been really entertaining to have you here in the booth, not only for Radenso Sports Car Challenge, but also for Grid Life Touring Cup. So kind of straddling that line between real and virtual. Been super fun to have you here, so thanks again for joining us. And again, this is a special place to have you here tonight. So thanks for joining us, and looking forward to an hour on the high banks of Daytona International Speedway.
Well, thanks for that. Yeah, it's been an absolute blast. I think I was just kind of to talk about you and I for a second while we watch Ryan Christoph in qualifying. We've gotten a lot of compliments over the last couple Grid Life rounds about how you and I mesh as commentators, and I think there's a lot to be said for commentating sim racing when you can't see each other, and you got to learn off playing each other. And I remember thinking back to Coda, the very first race, we hit live, and then I realized that I can't even see what you're seeing, let alone look at you and hear with your tone and where you're going and everything. And it's been a blast to talk about these drivers, watch what I was going to say is some of the best racing period I've seen in a long time, let alone sim racing. And you said some of the best sim racing you've ever seen, let alone on Sim TV. These guys have been a blast, but it's also been a pleasure to work with you and be on Sim TV.
Well, it's been a fun year for sure, and there's no immediate future for the Radenso Sports Car Challenge. We're kind of consolidating some work heading into the fall here, but that doesn't mean it's down and out. We've still got plans at some point to fire this back up, probably in the summer of 2021. We'll bring it back and better than ever. Not exactly sure what the plans are in terms of car, tracks, any of that sort of thing yet, but just keep your eye out on Sim TV if you want to learn more about the future of Radenso Sports Car Challenge and where and when that will fire back up. So with 2 minutes left in qualifying, Ken Halseal still holds on to pole in Grand Sport. All the way down in TCR, Will Robbins is the one on pole here at 158.9. And the class differential speed-wise here is pretty large, Tom, because it's a lot of straightaway, and the Grand Sport cars are a hair faster on the long straights, and that means about a 5 or 6 second differential, which is one of the larger speed differences that we've seen at any of the tracks this season.
Yeah, they're a little more than a hair faster. They're quite a bit faster, and the TCR cars are actually faster in corners, a lot of times better on the brakes. As you see by that about 5 second gap between the pole time of now Riley Thompson takes the pole by about 0.07 of a second over Ken Halseal, and then obviously Will Robbins on pole by a pretty good margin right now over Andrew Pilata, 3 whole tenths. I was going to say the TCR cars are often a lot of times quicker in a lot of sections of the track, but no chance here for the GS cars. And another interesting part talking about TCR is they actually top out here at Daytona International Speedway, especially on banking especially in the draft on the banking, coming down towards turn 1, which is right where we're looking at Paul Darling come in. So the draft is beneficial in the TCR car, but only up to a point, because then you hit that veering wall and you're just not going any faster.
And Darling having well over 150 miles an hour on the front straightaway, and the TCR cars won't quite get up to that speed. So lap traffic might be an interesting discussion here tonight as well. Again, it's a 1-hour endurance race, so there will be lap traffic to contend with. That's something that hasn't really been a huge concern because of the sprint race nature of this series this season. So something new to deal with here, along with some new drivers entering here that aren't necessarily familiar with their surroundings. Thomas Bressi, this is probably his first time ever racing this car in the 124. I also know that Zach Passon in the number 19 car back in 12th. This is his first race in this car, I believe, as well. And he's also dealing with some brake pressure issues as well with his pedal setup. So it'll be interesting to see how turn 1 pans out for these drivers as Paul Darling jumps to the top of the board with a 153.576, a tenth and a half over Riley Thompson. And Will Robbins, hangs on for pole in TCR. So Darling and Robbins, your pole sitters as we head down to the racetrack, and the sun explodes in golden light as we head down to the racetrack for our final race of the season. Is that not the most beautiful thing you've ever seen?
It's absolutely spectacular, and it's very similar to real life, I must say. But this will be very interesting, a whole different kind of race dynamic. We go into a 1-hour endurance race. They're at a 50% fuel limit, which forces 1 pit stop during this. And I would say typically an endurance race introduces a different format. I think we're going to see 2 sprint races separated by a pit stop. And there's really not a whole lot of strategy involved with a 1 pit stop, 50% fuel race. You know, you kind of pick in maybe a 5 or 6 lap window when you want to do your pit stop. But realistically, I think we're just going to see a full 1-hour version of what are typically our, 10-ish, 15-minute-ish sprint races, which is going to be a ball.
So you see the golden light here. Of course, we're heading into the evening, and the transition from day to darkness is going to be another thing to contend with. Have one last look at our weather here. Track temp 84 degrees, air temp 81, humidity also pretty high, 84%. So we might see the track temp drop just a little bit. Shouldn't be too much of an issue here tonight as we get prepared for our 60-minute endurance event. As we head to the back straightaway here, there is the field lining up, almost 30 cars tonight, one of the bigger fields that we've had as well. And we'll run through our starting lineup here, Tom. On the front row this evening, in the Grand Sport category, Paul Darling in the 155 and Riley Thompson in the number 56.
And Paul Darling capping this season off with a pole, off to a strong start, but Ken House-Seal is going to be chasing him from the inside of the second row alongside Thomas Bressi, the top BMW M4 in the field.
In row number 3, Zach Buchanan rolls off in 5th in the number 40 Project 2 car, and Tony Chow starts 6th in the 68.
And Christopher Lapris, the OG BMW driver, starting it last week, starts in the 7th position alongside Evan Schickel in 8th in a Cayman.
In 9th place, Drew Eisenman starts in the number 7, Alex Barroso in 10th in the number 15.
Kevin Zhu will be in his Cayman in 11th spot alongside Zach Passon, new driver this week in a BMW M4 starting 12th.
In 13th, Anthony Montello from Lazy Rocket Vinyl Produce starts in the number 24, right alongside Finian DeCuna in the number 94 and 14th.
Casey Shu, another driver is a new name for me, and another BMW, looks like a team car. Thomas Bressi will start 15th, and Randy Bader Jr. from Radenso will start in 16th.
In 17th, Francois Brou will round out the Grand Sport field. We'll only show you the couple front starters in TCR. Will Robbins, Andrew Pilata, first row. Second row, Eric Mickey, Elias Roman. Third row, Andrew Mickey and Ryan Christoph. Row 4, Ryan Carwile and Sarah Tessam, as the field heads at the exit of NASCAR turn number 4. A 60-minute endurance event for the Radenso Sports Car Challenge will round out our season, as the pace car is going to head for the safety of pit road, the high banks of Daytona, where it all started for American motorsport in the modern era. Here we go. Pace cars off. The Radenso Sports Car Challenge for the final time this season will take the green flag with the 155 of Paul Darling, the pole sitter, and we're racing from the high banks of Daytona as we run down to turn number 1 in Grand Sport.
Ooh, it's a strong start for Darling, and here comes Lapris up the outside of Buchanan. But they're all pretty early on the brakes. They all know this is a 1-hour race. There's not a whole lot to be won in this first corner like there is even in the 20, 15-minute race formats that we've had before. But Darling already breaking away. Look at Ken House-Seal, sweeps across the nose of Bressi to take over second. And it's Riley Thompson who's fallen down just a little bit. Oh, and Kevin Zhu goes for a ride. Not a good start to his race.
He's already in the fence. We head back to the TCR field. A little bit of slipping and sliding for Elias Roman on the brakes as they head down into turn number 1. Everyone sneaking through okay so far in TCR. Again, the front-wheel drive platform's a little bit more stable on the opening lap. just because they got that front-wheel drive layout allows them to just pound the throttle to save their cars, but the rear tires not yet up to temp, so they might be a little bit skatey for now. So Kevin Zoo's already got trouble, and he's off again right in front of the race leaders, and Andrew Pallada's around. He's spun at the exit of the International Horseshoe, Tom. The points runner-up right now, already at the bottom of the order in TCR.
Oh, and he's going to have a lot of work cut out for him because he's just barely outside of the drafting distance of the back half of these cars. So he's going to need to put in some qualifying quality laps here to catch up and then start to work his way through the field.
But Paul Darling is free and clear right now in Grand Sport as they head the exit of NASCAR turn number 2. Ken Ausiel, Thomas Bressie, Thompson, Buchanan, your top 5. If you want to watch live timing and scoring, head to simtvbroadcasting.com/timing to follow along live. Now into the bus stop for the first time here. This is a crucial corner to get speed onto the front straightaway to complete the first lap. Look at the 15 of Barroso slipping and sliding as he comes out of the corner trying to gather speed.
But the field is mostly through clean, and again, looks like Christopher Lapras might have had some issues too. He's way back there, almost in last place in GS, but now the TCR cars start to sweep their way through the bus stop, and again, back end's dancing around, but it's a strong start for Eric Mickey, who had qualified 3rd. He's up to 2nd already with that kind of disaster for Andrew Pallada, but Andrew Pallada is not necessarily out of this one.
For 3rd place, Bressie to the inside of Riley Thompson to hang on for 3rd, but here comes Ken Ausiel for the race lead, side by side, 1st and 2nd of the point standings. For down in 2, the International Horseshoe on the brakes. Does Darling fight it hard to the inside? Is there going to be some contact real close there, mirror to mirror, door to door?
Wow, racing so hard this early in the race. We have well over 57 minutes to go, and they're still side by side up into the kink. It looks like Ausiel might back out of this one. Just now he does, and Darling sweeps across the nose. He's going to defend now into the 2nd horseshoe, but Ausiel is looking racy, and that Thomas Bressie looks up the inside for just a moment in the BMW. I think that car is going to race really strong tonight. He's one to watch.
Ryan Carwile's around in turn number 1, and there was more to this. Our race leader coming into the first corner was Will Robbins, number 35. Well, you see, he's all the way back in 6th place now. Let's go back and have a quick look at how he found himself in this situation. On the middle of the front straightaway, they tangled here. This was Eric Mickey in the 88 car, bumping and pushing on the front straight. Here's a look at the replay here, Tom. As they come into the tri-oval, he just turns them around.
And bump drafting in iRacing is such a risky move because you're dealing with a simulation that has to predict where 2 people in 2 separate locations are working through the internet, and you can just get these odd contacts every once in a while. So surprised to see them bump drafting so boldly, and I'm not super surprised to see that it went that wrong, although it's super unfortunate for Eric Mickey, who has, again, been the epitome of consistency this whole season. He didn't do anything wrong there. Neither of them did anything wrong. It's just kind of one of the realities of sim racing, and you see now he's back in 9th place, well out of touch with the field. And this TCR race, I was expecting it to be just a pack the entire time. It's looking like it's going to be pretty spread out, and that might benefit Elias Roman the most, who again was well within striking distance of the championship lead here.
Back up in the front, 3 wide for the race lead. Darling in the middle, Ausiel on the bottom, and Bressie on the outside, going for the lead in his first ever start in Radenso Sports Car Challenge. Darling runs wide, Ausiel's on through, he takes the lead away. Now Bressie throttles up his big M4, just gunning for that car to grab 2nd spot away. Can't do it. Riley Thompson has a look down the inside into the International Horseshoe, and here's Buchanan as well. It's a 5-car fight for the race lead as they head through the Horseshoe.
Yeah, and this is what I expected from TCR, but now it's Buchanan and Thompson still side by side, and I completely, that BMW is going to be so strong. It's going to be a complete nuisance to our championship leaders, and that is exactly what Ken Ausiel needed to do, especially if he can kind of prompt a little bit of a battle between Bressie and Darling. I think that those two start racing and Ausiel can break away. That is the pipe dream for Ausiel right now in that 23 car.
Andrew Pallada's day is done off the racetrack, Tom, for the number 14, so that is championship hopes dashed just like that. That is a heartbreaker for Pallada, whose night started on a bad note right from the very beginning.
And I have to wonder if there was more contact or something else that happened to him. I'm going to take my own machine back and see what looked, just so I can kind of answer that for myself. But that's a heartbreaker, and that's on the flip side, good news for championship leader Eric Mickey, who is having a disastrous race. Elias Roman continues to lead, and he was in 3rd in the championship. But if he has a good night tonight, and Eric Mickey isn't able to climb up any higher, we could see Elias Roman take this championship in TCR.
Well, what a shocker that would be. Again, both championship leaders having major issues. Eric Mickey on pit lane right now. He's been there for 43 seconds. You see Zach Buchanan run high in NASCAR turn number 3. Riley Thompson up the inside. Paul Darling wants the lead back, drafting up to the rear tailpipes of the number 23 on the front straightaway. Looks out, driver's right. With 54 minutes left, you'd think there was nothing left as they come across the line 3 wide again for the race lead here at Daytona. And Bressi with the M4 power around the outside, he leads that lap by a nose.
And that car is pretty good on the brakes. Watch what happens here as he's trying to run the outside line. It's a little awkward because there's a lot of pavement, but it's pretty narrow. And Bressi's going to hold on the outside. Look at the momentum how Seal has now trying to poke up the inside, but the lights on that BMW glowing. He is hunting for this lead and wants to start to drive away. I think the BMW is fast enough in a straight line to lead, even with the drafting of the Porsches from behind. And it's Bressi now to second. We're going to watch this for the next 55 minutes, I tell you.
It's going to be really, really good. Meanwhile, in TCR, battle for the race lead here as well. Christoph to the inside of Elias Roman. He leaves the inside lane open. Behind them, Andrew Mickey. That's the team car on the Bombshell Racing team vehicle. Down to the inside in turn number 1. Oh, Roman slips on the brakes, and so does Christoph. He runs wide at corner exit, way out into the grass as Andrew Mickey closes the gap.
And one thing with Daytona is there's not a lot of cornering, and that means there's not a lot of opportunity for the rear tires of these TCR cars to come up to temperature, and we're still seeing the consequences of that. These guys still slip sliding. There's more of it from the back of Ryan Christoph. He's got that car turned out real loose, and now Andrew Mickey, and what's probably the strongest showing for him this entire season, is challenging for the lead side by side into the kink between the horseshoes.
Oh man, and the tires just up to temp now, 4 laps in the braking zone. Christoph around the outside, can he get it slowed down? Mickey's gonna hug the inside curbing. And Christoph making the outside line work. He's going to hang on to the lead for now. But 1, 2, 3, Christoph, Mickey, Roman, Sarah Tessum is 8 seconds back. So it's really just these front 3 we're watching for now. Back in the middle of the Grand Sport Field, Evan Schickel and Zach Buchanan. Buchanan fell back a little bit. He was battling up inside the top 5, but must have made a bit of a mistake. He's fallen out just outside the top 5 into 7th.
And we're already dealing with lap traffic. It looks like the GS leader is coming past Eric Mickey, who's soldiering on, very solitary last place in TCR, but he knows that this championship is on the line, even with Elias Roman so far back. Whoa, across the nose, Thomas Bressi catches Paul Darling off guard just a little bit. Looks like Paul decided to set up really wide and try for a different approach on turn 1, but it's not going to pay off. And it's Thomas Bressi in the 124 BMW goes to the lead with about 50 minutes left in this race. So we've had a different leader every single lap so far into turn 1 in GS, and Paul Darling now comes back with the power down of that mid-engine Porsche, trying up the outside in the International Horseshoe, what becomes the outside for the kink here, and Thomas Bressi holding the point, but Ken Halseal and Zach Buchanan, sorry, not Zach Buchanan, Riley Thompson still not out of this one either.
It's so obvious to me where the advantages are of the M4. It's just so much better getting power down and driving on corner exit, but the Cayman is so much better through the infield section, and for Darling, he's got to get back out in front of this M4 because it will run away from him on the straightaways. Meanwhile, Ryan Christoph has fallen out of the top 3 battle. He had an issue maybe through the bus stop. Here's a look. He was leading the race into the bus stop. Was there a touch maybe from the 86 of Andrew Mickey? Here's a look. Oh, just got loose.
No, he's in way hot, and that's still the rear end of that car is just all over the place still 5 laps in, and he keeps it out of the wall, tacks her up and dumps her, gets it back onto the track. So the 46 car, no contact in that, but a lot of ground lost. And look at this, a little bit of a gap as Paul Darling has drafted to the back of Thomas Bressi, but the 2 of them pulling away from Ken Halseal and Riley Thompson just a little bit on the straightaway. Now through the bus stop, they start to close back up. And what's interesting is what was I expected to happen in TCR is happening in GS and vice versa. I expected a little bit of more separation in GS, but we still have basically the top 10 or within touch, about top 8 all the way back to Alex Barroso are within touch of the leaders, and as long as they kind of stay there, they're just going to continue to tick away these laps for the next 50 minutes of this race, and anybody from Evan Schickel to Zach Buchanan to Alex Barroso could still win this race.
And Bressi was able to stretch a little bit of a gap, but you see now the Cayman close on the brakes behind them. That's Ken Halseal. He's going to go for second through turn number 1. If these 2 fight, that could let Bressi drive away, and they are side by side, almost banging doors as they head through the S-curve into the International Horseshoe, and Thompson behind them in 4th, waiting to kind of have a chomping at the bit here, just like he did at VIR with Paul Darling back a couple months ago. That was amazing to think how long ago that really was. But Riley Thompson's definitely not out of this race win just yet. We still have so much time to go, and these guys are racing like it's the last lap, but Darling trying to use the advantages of the Cayman to just eat up the 124 through the infield here.
Yeah, and I think what's becoming clear is that the BMW is not strong in the infield. As you can see, he's kind of compressing the entire field through the infield to a point now where basically that top 7 are in a train. But the BMW is fast enough, as I said, to lead in the front and not really be, it's not easy to pass. So Paul Darling is going to have to study and kind of exercise his patience here, because we do have some data that says that the BMW falls off just a little bit harder than the Cayman, even though they've improved that. For the Cayman, for the BMW this week, the BMW does tend to fall off a little bit harder. It's a heavier car. It's a less ideal platform with the heavy front engine and the more power going to the rear wheels. So Bressy's job right now is to manage his car, whereas Darling's is to manage himself, to be patient and let the race come to him without getting too impatient and make mistakes like we just saw him make in turn 1. He got a little deep, and that's what allowed the rest of the field to catch back up to him.
And does Thomas Bressy know how to save these tires? Again, this is not a car or platform that he's familiar with. Typically comes from driving stock cars on the oval side of the service. He does race in the Spec MX5 Sim Racing Challenge. He is not necessarily new to road course racing, but new to this car for sure, as they run across the start-finish line, door to door. Darling on the outside, and the M4 so good and so late on the brakes that he's able to pull that gap back and re-clear the 155 into the first corner.
But that was still interesting to me that Paul Darling was able to draft up at least alongside Thomas Bressy, which means that he could force the issue if he really needs to. And as we see the tires of that BMW start to fall off, the tires of the Cayman fall off too, but I think the balance of the Cayman is going to come in, where the balance of the BMW is going to fall off just a little bit. And interesting to see that Darling is kind of practicing where he can show the nose, where he can draft up alongside, and if he needs to force the issue, we got 47.5 minutes now. If he's only got a half a minute left and he needs to force the issue, I think he might actually have the strength to do so.
Let's not lose the big picture here. Paul Darling might really, really want to win this race, but all he's got to really do is not have a bad night. Ken Alseal is right behind him, and that's enough for Paul Darling. If he finishes exactly where he is right now, that would do it. But he can't afford necessarily to be complacent here, because if Bressy makes a mistake and potentially involves the 155, then it's Ken Alseal's championship to win. So there's a lot on the line here for Darling to be racing hard, but we'll see what he chooses to do.
Yeah, that is a good point. Bressy's not the car to beat, really, for Darling. Alseal is, and right now he's beating Alseal. So if he finishes like this, maybe it's not the best for the ego, but it is the best for the championship to kind of let that one go. While they're kind of working their way single file through the bus stop, I'm keeping my eye on TCR. They were side by side into turn 1, but Elias Roman still has the lead. So Andrew Mickey is challenging hard, and it's just that 2-car breakaway. As long as neither of them make a mistake, I don't think that Christopher Tessem will catch them. So the race really, really heavily is on in GS. TCR is going to just be a chess match between two drivers this entire time.
Eric Mickey looks like he might have retired his car here, Tom. He's pulled off into the pits. He's been there for 3.5 minutes, so that's big for Elias Roman to be out up front. And as we took a look at the championship standings before coming into the night, Elias Roman was 52 points back. Remember, it's double points this evening. So if Elias Roman wins and Mickey finishes down in 9th, I don't know if that's still going to work out for him here, Tom, but it would certainly make it a little bit closer than he otherwise would want it to be.
Yeah, it's going to be close. And if he's in 9th, if he scores 9th place points, move for the lead. Paul Darling goes up underneath Thomas Bressy in the International Horseshoe, and he's going to lead off the corner with the power down of that Cayman. Now Alseal also goes for a little bit of a run on Bressy, but it's not going to work. And the BMW falls victim. Are we already seeing a little bit of fall off on the 124 car, or was that just a mistake to allow Paul Darling to get up the inside? Looks like Bressy is now back to driving tight and tidy, not going to allow Alseal to get up the inside, but look at how much gap Darling has been able to put on Bressy just in that couple of corners. He's made the move, and 3 corners later, he's 3 car lengths ahead.
Yeah, I'm really thinking that could be what we're seeing, but only 15 minutes in, that really worries me, because again, we're going to have to make a pit stop at some point, and Bressy's going to be taking tires. The question is, how long are you going to run out your tank and your tires before you come get replacements? It's not an insignificant amount of time to spend on pit lane taking tires, so you have to kind of make that part of your strategy. As we come out of NASCAR Turn 2, the lights are on the cars, the lights are on the racetrack, and the golden glow of the Daytona sun is setting on the season of the Radenso Sports Car Challenge. Into the bus stop now for the 8th time. Darling, Bressy, Alseal, Thompson, Chow, your top 5. But Chow's got a mirror full of Zach Buchanan's number 40 Project 2 Cayman.
And Evan Schickel's in there too, but just looking back at Darling's run through the bus stop, look how tight and tidy he looks in the 155, and this is where we've seen Darling shine, is when he's at the front, he can control the pace of this race. The wild card for this entire thing is going to be Bressy's BMW. If he can get back up in the front and continue to interrupt Darling's rhythm, that's going to be, like I I said the wild card, because Darling, when this was a spec racing series, you know, when it was just the Cayman, when he got to the front, he was almost impossible to pass. Whoa, a huge move on the outside for Buchanan.
Whoa, he sent that in there deep and somehow got it slowed on down. You see the background, the TCR field making their way back onto the NASCAR oval, but Bresci did close back up to Paul Darling's rear bumper, so I'm not sure he's down and out just yet. We'll see if he can handle the higher loads on the cornering forces here through the infield road course. Again, when you're up on the oval going straight, there is definitely load on the tire in the banking, but you're putting a lot more longitudinal force on it through the corners and the infield. So we'll see if that heats up the tires of that 124 even more. Back, quick check on TCR. Roman and Mickey all by their lonesome. 5.8 seconds out in front of Ryan Kristoff, but now Kristoff has some room to play strategy, so don't count out the 46 car just yet.
And it's also going to be a kind of a fingers crossed, hopeful and praying for Kristoff that these two not only do what they're doing right now and race each other hard, but get interrupted by traffic as much as possible. And these cars probably maxed out on gearing right now, so they're just basically waiting for the braking zone as Andrew Mickey with a huge run around the outside is going to sweep across the nose of Roman and take the lead for TCR on this lap. These are probably just going back and forth like this for a little bit. Oh no, that's Brew into the wall.
Yeah, Francois Brew is in the fence. This is over, I believe, in the West Horseshoe. And typically this happens when you get loose in the kink. And right here, you see him catch the curb on corner exit and slams the Armco. That's a big impact there for the 69 of Francois Brew. Just not where you want to be here, Tom, but it's so easy to make this mistake. Just track out a little bit too far, catch the edge of the curb, and send your car for a ride.
Yeah, and it's so hard to catch, too, because it's just once these Caymans get away from you, you're along for the ride. It's really challenging, and I was going to say that about Thomas Bresci's BMW. You could see it really dancing on the power coming out of the International Horseshoe last lap. The BMW is a little more forgiving. A couple other notes.
Bresci dropping out. I think he might have had a slowdown there as Riley Thompson goes to second. Paul Darling's gathered a 1 second lead on everybody, so a big scramble down into the first corner as Buchanan goes up the inside for fourth. And I believe Bresci's slowdown was a result of the exit of the inner loop, and you see him slipping and sliding there, maybe panicking a little bit. Let's go back and have a look at his run through the bus stop here.
Looks like he's in just a little too hot. Yep, shoots across the grass, and that's just enough to get you in trouble. So that's where you're kind of pushing the limits of it. He starts to pull high. That's a gentlemanly move to not interrupt anybody else's race. But what that also did is allowed Riley Thompson to draft up and around the outside of Ken Halseal. So we have a new second place car. That's Riley Thompson in the orange number 56. And then Ken Halseal is trailing, falling further and further away from where he needs to be behind Paul Darling, who is doing what Paul Darling does, just controlling this race at the front. There's another lap on the field as it looks like Eric Mickey is back on track, maybe just fixed up some damage on that car and is going to continue to lap, but it's going to be a pretty lonely and maybe a little frustrating remainder of a 41-minute endurance race for Eric in that 88 car.
And he's now 3 laps down to the class leader, so not going to be a good night for him regardless. It still could be a championship night depending on how things sort out. You see Paul Darling, though, he's got a 1.2 second lead. Is this enough, Tom, to run away if he just runs some really good laps, or do you think the field's eventually going to reel him back in?
I think they'll probably reel him back in just based on the nuance of lap traffic and based on the ebb and flow of the entire show. Look at that run that Riley Thompson just got. So he's right on the verge of the draft distance back to Paul Darling. And if Riley Thompson's there, then that means Ken Halseal is there, which means Tony Chow is there. And that chain of that draft is going to bring basically this entire group back in. But I think, like I was calling Bresci the wild card, that the different BMW, the way that car makes speed differently is now out of the fight. This is going to start to look a little bit more like a normal Radenso Sports Car Challenge race until Bresci can get back up there. But Bresci's dropping off the back a little bit more every lap. About 4/10 back of Schickel right now, still in 7th.
You see right behind them is Tony Chow and Ken Halseal. Buchanan runs wide down in turn number 1. Gonna have to rejoin the racetrack, so Ken moves his way back into 3rd. Oh no, trouble! The 40 gets slammed off the racetrack into the grass. And that was contact with Evan Schickel that sent him out there. And did the tire indeed come off that car, or was it just a mirage? As
yes, it was.
Looks like it was a mirage as the setting sun here. Let's go back and have a look at exactly how this happened. Just tries to rejoin and the 33 of Schickel going to move to the right and just tank slaps the 40 car off the racetrack there, Tom.
Yeah, Buchanan was in deep. Bresci was also, so I was kind of eyes on the BMW, and you see Buchanan made it back on the track, but I don't know if Schickel was on this. He was kind of on a normal trajectory to make the corner. Not a whole lot of fault you could place on either of those drivers because Buchanan had rejoined safely, but Schickel was just kind of straight and narrow on his line too. As we're now side by side once again for the lead in TCR. Mickey's got that outside run again, but Roman had come back for it, so they're alternating back and forth lap to lap at the front in TCR.
Did you think this was going to be a boring hour? Because it's not. It has not been a boring hour so far. We're 20 minutes in. We've seen probably a dozen lead changes between both categories, maybe even more than that. We're 11 laps in. I think we've seen probably close to 9 or 10 lead changes amongst Grand Sport alone. But you mentioned Paul Darling eventually getting reeled back in. Riley Thompson did close the last time through up to within 0.8 of a second. How about for fourth? Schickel and Chow side by side through NASCAR Turn 3.
But I think it's also important to note that Darling had that gap back up to 1.1 seconds exiting the bus stop, which means Darling is just faster through the infield. And then it's the draft that's allowing Thompson now, look at that, the gap tumbling 3 wide back in 5th. But the gap between Darling and Thompson is really ebbing and flowing based on the draft. Seal up wide, Bresci around the outside. Here comes that M4 back into play. And as the sun starts to set, the temps are going to get cooler and cooler. The BMW is going to be happier and happier with those tires. Doesn't look like it's hurting too much, but you can see the rear end just trying to step out on power down. He's made 1 pass, so that's up to 5th now for Bresci.
He's looking for 4th on the inside of Tony Chow. Things are going to get real tight here. Zach Passon hits pit lane. The number 19, maybe an early pit stop for him. Again, new to this car, so maybe just trying to get fresh tires and fuel in that machine to take it to the end in the final 38 minutes of action. Up at the front, it's a second between Darling and Thompson. In TCR, still very tight between Elias Roman and Andrew Mickey. Ryan Kristoff has closed in a full second on those front two since the last time we checked in. Real tight between Bresci and Schickel at the exit of West Bend. That was kind of a door slam there on Bresci, but just trying to hang on as he closes in on Tony Chow in front of him.
Chow is having a great race. I was also just lost my train of thought of what I was going to say. Oh, that we are now past standard race distance for Radenso Sports Car Challenge. We usually target about a 20-minute race, so we're now into kind of uncharted territory for these drivers. There was a lot of discussion about testing longevity in tires and how much fuel everybody's using. So I wouldn't expect to see pit stops until closer to maybe 33 minutes, 32 minutes remaining in this race. So we might have 1 or 2 more laps before we start to see drivers dive for pit lane, and then it could be well into the 30 to 35 minute mark in this race that we see drivers stay out, extending their pits, maybe having saved a little bit more fuel and tires, and then trying to save every little bit that they have for the very end of this race, because it doesn't matter what's going on right now so much. You got to be in position to win, but it comes down to who has the best car and who has the best race at the very end. Look at Bresci around the outside of Chow, who's got to run along Hauseal too. Hauseal dives all the way underneath.
He's going to pit road. Hauseal just went to pit lane. So that will move Bresci up into the podium spot for now as Hauseal goes to pit road. And that's a little bit surprising for me, Tom. But again, we're running times that for Paul Darling, he just ran really only a couple thousandths off of his best time. Actually, it was a couple thousandths quicker, but a dirty lap. So we're not seeing any drop off, at least in the Caymans. But for Bresci, he's about a full second off of where he was. So maybe this BMW is eating through tires a bit more, but time will tell as they have now lost touch with the front two, Thompson and Darling, who are now pulling away 4 seconds out in front of the fight for third.
Yep, a couple of implications there. I think one interesting point is Hauseal maybe had been feeling that he was being raced a little bit too much, maybe was losing a little bit too much time. He might be trying to just go out and have some clean laps. And if he can get out there and just run some clean laps right now, qualifying style, he might be able to make up time on these guys who are racing each other so hard back between Bresci, Chow, and Schickel. On the flip side of that, these drivers who have been battling with Hauseal have lost the bridge to the draft up to Darling and Thompson. With Hauseal being gone, he was kind of their bridge up to that point. So that has implications not only for Hauseal, but for the drivers who are behind him, as Hauseal is now back on track, and we don't expect to see him on pit lane until the very end of this, or it's not pit lane, we don't expect to see him back on pit lane for the remainder of this race.
Into the bus stop now. This is such a high-speed section of racetrack that requires you to be inch perfect. Not a lot of curb to use. Whoa. It's very flat. Big slide for Schickel on corner entry. And you see all the time that he's going to give up, Tommy. You have to carry so much momentum through there. If you make a mistake on corner entry, it carries all the way to the front stretch.
Yeah, all the way back to start finish in turn 1, which is why it's so painful. Right now, Evan Schickel's still losing time on these two, so we went from a 4-car battle for third all the way down to a 2-car battle. But there's the battle at the front. Paul Darling and Riley Thompson, not much gap. Actually, Thompson looks like he's got a faster lap going this time by, is all the way down to 0.6 of a second gap between the two of them. And Thomas Bressi continues to muscle that BMW around and keep himself in podium contention. He's really the only BMW after Chris Lapris's issues on the first lap that is a factor in this race, and it's making a very big impact on the dynamic of this race, just having one of these different kind of cars out here, which is really cool.
It really is neat to see as Bressi hangs on to third, although they're still running much slower laps than the two up at the front of the field. Checking briefly back in on TCR, it's still Elias Roman and Andrew Mickey at the top spot. We see a couple more pit stops happening here. You see Zach Buchanan's down on pit lane, the Project 240. Finney DeCuna in the Sim TV number 94. He'll hit pit lane. So pit stops maybe a little bit earlier than I would have expected to see here, Tom, but I would expect the rest of the field to hit pit lane in the next 4 or 5 minutes.
Yeah, and I'm surprised that they're doing it earlier rather than later, because you can have a much fresher car the later you pit into these races. So I would have honestly expected to see pit stops happening as late as 25 minutes remaining, 22 minutes remaining. But a couple of these drivers kind of flipping that and pitting early, and they're going to go for a longer run on these tires at the end. So I don't know if, say Ken Hauseil's able to put in a bunch of good laps right now. He may have done the testing to say that the fall off's just not that bad. But realistically, Ken Hauseil will have the worst car at the end of this race, as long as he's not, unless he's taking care of it. But he can't really accomplish hot laps taking care of it. So it's a really kind of double-edged sword. Look at Riley Thompson diving through the bus stop, using every bit of the track and more. Tons of grass on both sides of the bus stop, which is really high risk, knowing how the cut penalties work in here. But he's doing everything he can to keep up with Paul Darling, who's continued to be tight and tidy. I was also going to say the battle for fourth in TCR, which is coming across the start-finish line right now, is really cool, between Sarah Tessum, Will Robbins, who was a pole sitter, Brian Carlisle, and Benson Ty is in there too. So that's really, I was kind of expecting this to be the battle for the lead in TCR. It's for fourth, but it's still a cool battle.
These cars have been a lot of fun to watch. Think back to Road America a couple weeks ago. We had a 5 or 6 car dogfight into the final corner that sent a car sideways, and second and third across the line with a photo finish. I mean, these cars put on amazing races, and thankfully when you won here last year in 2019, it wasn't that close, although it very well could have been. It's all about nailing that bus stop on the very end of the lap, and for Roman and Andrew Mickey, with how close they're running, it's going to come down to that, and same thing for Grand Sport. I'm not sure you want to be the race leader heading into the bus stop, unless you're going to play some games with backing up the guy behind you, but this is something that you practice if you know you're going to be here in the sim racing world. We'll see how good everyone is at figuring that part out.
Yeah, and at least in TCR, we've seen that from Andrew Mickey's perspective, he was able to draft up and around the outside of Roman multiple times to regain the lead, and I think he was clear by start-finish. So I think in TCR, maybe you're at least right. If you can get a good run through the bus stop and draft, you may not want to be leading going into the bus stop in TCR. In GS, that's yet to be seen, and that also has the multi-make racing thrown in there. If it's Thomas Bressi versus any Cayman, I think Bressi wins it. But you see, as we watch this battle for fourth in TCR, just behind them, the leaders in GS are coming up right there. The yellow Cayman of Darling is only about a half a straightaway back, and that means that these guys are working their way into the really competitive and still racing drivers of TCR. Up to this point, they've kind of only been lapping individuals, so this will introduce a new aspect. But Riley Thompson is slowly coming closer and closer. Last time across the line, they were less than 4/10 apart, so I think Thompson is finding some footing.
Yeah, and again, I think he's really engaged in this chase and has kind of calmed himself down, gotten his mindset in the right place. You need to be perfect if you're going to run down a guy like Paul Darling, and I think he's focusing on the exit of the bus stop, because that's where you can really gain the most time with the least effort, just by lining that up and stringing it through. You saw him be so aggressive on the grass through there, Tom, but that's how you make speed around this place. If you're not aggressive with the track limits, you're not going to be fast through that area of the racetrack. I think there's a lot of ways to charge the infield. I just don't think that's going to make you very fast. I think it's on the far side of the course on the bus stop where you're going to gain all your speed.
And that's one of the things about Daytona, is so much wide open throttle on the banking that to make speed over another driver is just a really challenging thing to do. And you're right, you have to take big risks in places like the bus stop, but you also have to just be so precise, tight, and tidy, because mistakes compound here in a way that they don't compound at other racetracks. So you see Paul Darling now dealing with a little bit of lap traffic that's Benson Ty, and Benson doesn't have to make it easy for him.
Well, he just did.
Looks like he will.
Ran a little bit
he doesn't
wide.
have to, although he did, and that's going to bring a little bit of a gift for Paul Darling. Darling, but Riley Thompson is every bit as much there as he's been for this entire race. I'm going to say that's well within drafting and striking distance into the bus stop. We may see a side-by-side battle just this lap for the lead in GS.
Hey, there's a great battle for fourth place right in front of them as well, and they should be able to get at least near these TCR cars and at least by one of them. I'm not sure they'll be able to bypass the entire group by the time they get to the bus stop here, though, and that's going to be a really critical area to make a pass for Riley Thompson, is they're going to get very congested as they run down into the bus stop section. They're not even going to get to them as they head into the bus stop now. Darling and Thompson going to try to line this up for corner exit, and Thompson is there right on the rear bumper of the race leader.
Looks like, whoa, Darling, a little bit of a slide, comes out wide, and he's planning to go high. Now, typically what would you at Daytona is slow cars low, fast cars high. So these guys following that, that's good to see. I don't know that that was necessarily defined, but it is a little bit common sense. Paul Darling now sweeps up around the outside. Sarah Tessin with a fantastic run through the bus stop that lap and pulls away from Will Robbins. And look at Paul Darling searching for every ounce of draft that he can get. He tucks in just for that split second behind Sarah Tessin, and that's going to give him a slight advantage over Riley Thompson, who had been coming on the draft. Now he's not going to be able to get up alongside and continues to lead. We're past halfway with 29 minutes left to go in this 1 hour endurance race. Both leaders still not pit in GS yet. Looking back through, it looks like everybody but the top four, top six have pit at this point in GS.
Well, Bresci and Schickel have just hit pit lane just now, so making only the top four. Darling, Thompson, Chow, and Barossa still have to come to pit lane and get fuel and tires before the end of the race. But Bresci in the M4 is really the wild card in this race, and he started up inside the fourth position and has really thrown a big monkey wrench into things, but with a little bit of drama with a cut course penalty, kind of took himself out of the running, and he's going to have a lot of work left to do if he wants to run down Darling and Thompson. But with fresh tires, as these two fight amongst traffic, that could be enough for Bresci to close up the gap once everything cycles back out.
I'm surprised watching the two drivers that are on screen right now, Darling and Thompson. Darling is really focusing on corner exits, and you see how much gap he's got coming out of turn number 6 onto the banking. Riley Thompson is attacking the corners so hard, and it almost looks like the front of that car doesn't want to turn much anymore. So he might have used the front up a little bit, or he's just asking too much of it on corner entry. Two very different driving approaches, and it's kind of working for Thompson for a little bit, but Darling, I think, is the more consistent of the two of them. As you can see, they were about to 10th apart, nose to tail on the start-finish line, and they're well apart at this point. Look at that. That's, again, Riley Thompson diving into the corner, working the front a little bit harder. Paul Darling focusing on the exit, and again, we're going to see Darling just a nice, tight and tidy exit and driving away just a little bit until that draft starts to take effect once more for Thompson.
That's a half a second, 0.4 of a second now as they come through NASCAR 3 and 4. The banking, very, very famous at this racetrack. Again, the earth that was removed to construct those banks left a massive void in the center of the racetrack, and that is that big pit you see in the center, Lake Lloyd. It was stocked with fish, and you can ride your boat on it and do all sorts of cool stuff. It's a really neat part of this racetrack. But now down into the turn 1 braking zone with 27 minutes to go, just past halfway. Darling and Thompson have been the two up front since the slowdown penalty for Thomas Bresci. But behind him, you see fourth place Sarah Tessin, Will Robbins, and now Ryan Carwile all in a scrap for fourth place in TCR. As the TCR leaders have now separated, it's Elias Roman by 3 seconds over Andrew Mickey.
Yeah, Mickey is the slowest car in the top group. Ryan Christoph's actually been reeling him in quite significantly as Elias Roman has started to pull away. So I think Andrew Mickey may have made a mistake that dropped him outside of the draft of Elias Roman, and that's allowed Ryan Christoph, who's also running without the draft, but turning slightly faster laps, to start to close in on Mickey. I think we're going to have a battle for second. It's going to be tough for anybody at this point to catch Roman with the laps that he's turning. He's about a second a lap faster than Christoph, who's about a second a lap faster than Mickey. So pretty big spread in TCR. Again, this is not the race I was expecting to see in TCR whatsoever. The race we were seeing in GS is really what I expected to see more of. But as I say that, Darling continuing to pull away from Thompson, who I think started to look a little frantic there, and it's hurting him a little bit.
Yeah, and again, I think we've kind of settled into the meat portion of this race, and this is kind of the long haul here. A 1 hour race is not really a super long event. I think the one that you won was a 4 hour enduro, if I recall correctly. So that's sort of long. 1 hour, at times in a sim racing environment, it can feel pretty long, and I think this is kind of where you start to, if you're still out here on old tires, you're going to feel the car starting to give up speed. But for others who are frantically trying to gain ground, an hour is not long enough, and they're really trying hard to gather time back. The driver I'm thinking of is Thomas Bresci. He really needs to make time if he wants to have a chance to win this race.
And the other driver I'm watching is the first person to pit. That was Ken Hausiel. And based on the gaps I'm looking at, I think he may still be the leader of the cars who have pit, although we saw Evan Schickel pit, and he's well ahead of Houseel. So I don't know if something happened to the 23 car. I'm going to look through his laps. No, he's been trucking right along okay. So we're just kind of keeping an eye on the 23 car, who was the first car to pit. Once again, he's a championship contender and has been kind of solitary right now, but he could pop up after all these pit stops and end up being the car to beat. It's going to be tough to tell until the leaders pit.
Paul Darling now working his way through the podium drivers in the TCR category. There is Ryan Christoph's number 46 as he works through the West Horseshoe. Riley Thompson trying to keep chase here, but he's about a half a second to a second behind, and he has not been able to crack that in the last 3 or 4 laps. I think his tires have really given up, and it's just the draft keeping him within range of the 155. But that's all he needs to do. If he can just stay within touch of this 155, that bright yellow car in front, and they come to pit lane, all is forgiven in terms of the tire and fuel strategy. He'll be able to pounce on the Darling car towards the end of the race.
Yeah, it's a hard reset, and then it's back to, at this point, pretty much a Radenso Sports Car Challenge sprint race. We're going to be at about 20 minutes to go, and we're racing for all the marbles. And again, we could see drivers like Schickel, Bressi, Houseel back in the fight. So even though this is a 2-car race, it appears to be a 2-car race anyway right now, we could still have a bunch of cars in this battle. The traffic has gifted a little bit of a bit of gap to Riley Thompson back from Darling. Those two are about a half a second apart right now, working past some more lap traffic. Do they dive to the pit lane this time? We're really getting down to the point where they might have to.
Looks like Darling thought about it. He thought about it for a second,
but
didn't take it. And let's remember what's on the line here tonight for the championship winners. Each winner of the Grand Sport class and the TCR class will receive a Radenso XP radar detector for their own personal vehicle. We want to thank Randy Bader Jr. and, of course, Radenso Radar for setting that up. And thanks again to our wonderful sponsors at Radenso and Lazy Rocket. Of course, Lazy Rocket will be providing store credit for any stickers or vinyl applications that each class podium finisher would like. There is a stepped value for each of those credits for each podium finisher in each category. So thanks again to our sponsors for providing those things, as that's not on their mind right now. They just want to win the race and the championship, Tom. The prizes come later.
Yeah, and in TCR, Elias Roman was the leader. He pit that lap, as did Andrew Mickey from second. So the current leader on track is Ryan Christoph, Sarah Tessum, Ryan Carwile, who has actually just taken the point over from Sarah Tessum, and Will Robbins still having that amazing scrap. That's currently for second on the track, but realistically for about fourth, I think, once the pit stops cycle through. And the big question is, where does Ryan Christoph come out once he completes his pit stop, having done his along with Elias Roman and Aaron Drumicki, who have both done theirs already. There's about 20 seconds gap between the two of them. I don't think that's going to be enough for Ryan Christoph to have taken the lead. It might have been enough to take the second place spot away from Andrew Mickey, who's about 20 seconds further back of that.
Just waiting, the time game of waiting to see how this all is going to cycle out. And we're getting down to the last little bits of this race and this season of the Radenso Sports Car Challenge in 2020. 9 rounds across America and the world with 21 minutes and 45 seconds remaining. There is the battle for the race lead. The 155 of Paul Darling, who has 6 wins on the season, and Riley Thompson right behind him, who has 1 win on the season. And what would it mean for Riley Thompson to grab another one the very last race and winning like this? Challenging a guy all race long, it feels so much better to beat him out by a nose than it does by a mile.
So I confused myself a little bit a couple minutes ago when I'm looking down to Ken Houseel, trying to figure out where he might cycle through, and it looks like Ken might have made a mistake at some point on his pit stop, or he's gotten something wrong somewhere along the way, because he's genuinely behind Drew Eisenman, Evan Schickel, and Thomas Bressi, if not also Christopher Lapras.
Well, I'm taking a look at his pit stop time here, Tom. Take a look at the time, his pit stop time in the actual lane, 28.2 seconds for him.
Yeah, and it's about it should be about 13 seconds longer than Schickel and Bressi were both on pit lane, if my math is right.
Yeah, you see the pit stop time there, 9.8 for Bressi, and 28.2 for Ken Houseel, so he lost it all in the box. I wonder if this was a decision to take tires versus no tires, but I can't imagine that you wouldn't take tires if you're in the M4, which is notorious for destroying tires, but looking at the lap times, it would sort of make sense that Bressi didn't take tires, but Ken's not running any faster.
No, and Schickel didn't take tires either. So Bresci and Schickel are both for sure ahead of Ken Hausiel, and I really think, I bet you're right. I bet Hausiel chose to take tires, whether it was a mistake or not. I don't know, but he did. He had to have taken tires, and that's going to put him basically out of the race.
Yeah, that to me seems like a strategic blunder, but I can't blame him for it. I would have thought tires would have been the way to go, especially for the BMW, but that does not seem to be the case. Maybe they did the math in practice and decided it wasn't going to be worth it, but either way, Ken Hausiel is very much out of the championship picture and the picture to win this race. Buried in 9th in the standings as his championship foe, leading the standings, Paul Darling leads this event. And here they come to pit lane.
Dive to pit lane. Yeah, both in super deep. This is really challenging to get the car woed up. It looks like both of them were right on the ragged edge. And Thompson did everything he could to close that gap and did so. They're nose to tail coming to the box, and it's going to be a race to who has their fuel calculations done to the most precise moment. And the question actually really now in my mind is, do either of them take tires? Because I bet they don't.
Well, I bet, they have to be thinking about where Bresci and Schickel are going to be. If you look at where Bresci and Schickel are, they're through NASCAR 3 and 4 right now.
Ooh, it's going to be close.
It's going to be very, very close. As Darling, they leave pit lane. It's not going to be as close as we thought, I don't think. As they leave the box, Bresci's going to come across the start-finish line. It's going to be several seconds. But does Bresci have enough pace to run them down as they come out of pit lane? It's going to be a lot larger gap than I thought, but for the race lead, though, 2/3 of a second as they come out of the pits, Tom.
Yeah, and that was a telltale. Neither car went up on jack stands when it went into the pit box. So both of these drivers still on their original tires. Paul Darling, Riley Thompson, no change in formation. They're nose to tail. And it looks like Barroso is still in third.
Barroso, yeah, he's actually
is now behind Bresci.
Yeah, so Barroso has not yet hit pit lane in the number 15 car, so he's actually taken over the lead for the time being in the 15 car.
You're right. Okay, so that means that realistically, Paul Darling will be the leader, Riley Thompson will be second, and it looks like Thomas Bresci will be third once pit stops cycle through. We'll let that happen before 100% confirm that. Looking back in TCR, it looks like Ryan Christoph is still continuing to truck away. Pretty big surprise there.
Christoph has made a pit stop just this lap. So Christoph has made a pit stop, and the only driver who has yet to make one is Ryan Carwile in the 71. So Carwile, the only driver left on the racetrack besides Barroso to have not yet hit pit lane. So Alex and Ryan both have to make a stop before this race is over. That's going to toss up a lot of question marks. Elias Roman will still be leading TCR by about 7 seconds over Christoph. The question is, can Christoph run down Roman in the last couple laps? But Paul Darling stretches a gap on Thompson, 0.6 of a second. I would jump back briefly to 7th place, Christopher Lapras in the 183, and Ken Hausiel as they head into the bus stop.
And once again, Hausiel seems like either a strategic or just a mouse blunder, whether he meant to uncheck all those tires and missed it or not. We'll leave that to the post-race interview probably, but Hausiel charging back to salvage every bit of points that he can gain. This is the battle for, as you said, I think 6th, is that right?
7th place in class. It will be for 6th as Barroso has hit pit lane, although he is back out, so he's going to jump back out inside the top 5. As Ryan Carwile also hits pit lane from the race lead in TCR. Up at the front in Grand Sport, Paul Darling, Riley Thompson, 4.5 of a second between them with 16.5 minutes to go. Now it's going to be between these two. It's a 2-horse race at the front of Grand Sport.
And a tight race it is, because there has been almost no ebb and flow between these two. They've been within the same second on the track for well over a half hour at this point. And Riley Thompson, again, I look at him using up the car on the entry to that corner, loses a little bit of time on the way out. I think whether that's a driving style or whether that's a setup choice, I don't know. But I think Darling is pretty much going to be able to control this one from the front, as we've seen him do so many times before, just based on how much cleaner and tidier and more comfortable he looks with that car. Really, the only thing keeping Thompson in this race, I think, is the draft. And if anything happens to Darling's momentum, that's going to be Thompson's chance. I don't think Darling's going to get it on. Whoa, look at that entry speed, though. Wow, it's working for Thompson a couple times. It's just a matter of how hard it is on the car.
Yeah, he really chucked it in there deep and managed to hang on, so he should be able to get a pretty good run here. I just wonder if he gets out in front of Paul Darling, will he be able to control the race the way that Darling can control it when he's out front? front. You see them passing the palm trees and the inside of turns 3 and 4. Here they come. Riley Thompson on driver's right. Drag race to the start-finish line. He noses ahead for the race lead with 15 minutes to go. Lead change. Thompson will lead this lap. I'm not sure if he'll be able to hang on to the lead into turn number 1, but he's going to give it a try as they go onto the binders into the first corner.
And critical moment right there. If you draft all up alongside, exiting the bus stop, you can win the race at the start-finish line. So we now know in both classes, you don't have to be leading into the bus stop. You need to be leading at the start-finish line, obviously, but you can get a run and draft around the outside in both of these categories to take the win. So that's going to be a lot of fun to watch down to the very last second. I bet one of these races is won by hundreds, if not thousands.
Now, Ryan Kristoff last time through was 5 seconds behind Elias Roman, so don't count him out just yet. If he can start eating into the time that Roman is laying down, we could have a battle in TCR as well. 10.5 seconds back is Thomas Bressi in third on the last step of the podium for Grand Sport. He's got Tony Chow chasing him down by not insignificant margin, about 0.8 of a second last time through as the number 68 Cayman reels him in.
Yeah, the Caymans draft pretty well off the BMW, so if Chow can stay about there, he will eventually draft up and have a great race with Thomas Bressi in the 124 car. But Bressi, with the advantage of the BMW, I think when you just get down to a mano-a-mano race between these two cars, the BMW gets the nod just a little bit, at least at Daytona International Speedway. Maybe not at every track. But this is going to be a fun battle for first and a fun battle for third.
See if not taking tires will have hurt Bressi again. Hausiel did take them from what we understand, and it has not helped him. So I can't imagine it would have helped Bressi a whole lot either, but he's just having to nurse the car on old rubber, which is probably not a whole lot of fun in a car like that, which is a significant bit heavier than the Cayman and is a lot worse on tires. For the race lead in Grand Sport, Darling and Thompson continue 0.3 apart. They've been like this tit for tat all race long as we tick down to the final 8 or 7 laps here as we come across the start finish line. And Thompson and Darling, if you think back to VIR and the photo finish they had there, I can only imagine what this race is going to look like here tonight.
13.5 minutes to go as we start a new lap. It's kind of surprised Thompson, who looks up the outside. He's really deep, almost all 4 off the outside of the white lines there. Squares up the corner and gets the power down. He didn't really draft Darling all the way through the tri-oval. He was just kind of tucked out already, getting a run alongside, and I have to wonder what he was thinking with that one. But these cars buffing around a lot on the oval. You got to wonder maybe if he's okay cruising where he is, because he didn't really try all that hard to get by Darling that lap.
Well, maybe, again, I think there's a certain comfort in being behind somebody and having that draft, and I think for Thompson, as long as he's comfortable with how much he's able to suck back up to the rear bumper of the 155, you can actually kind of erase your minute mistakes using the draft to overcome those things.
Absolutely. That's an excellent point, and I think maybe Thompson is in that mindset. He's closer and closer every single lap. The gap with the line last time, less than 1/10 of a second. They had a bunch of overlap, and he's maintaining only 3 or 4 tenths gap from Darling through the infield, excuse me. And that's kind of where Darling has shown this entire race. So if Thompson's comfortable where he is, he's got 12 more minutes to kill, and he only needs to make the pass right at the very end. And now he's educated himself. He knows he can do it if he gets a good run through the bus stop. Let's see if he tries it again this time through. Watch that orange car on the brakes down into the bus stop. He tends to take a lot more risk on the way in, turns just a little bit earlier, switches back, and sure enough, closes up through the entry of the bus stop, and that's going to give him a little bit of more run. He's in the draft of the 155 now. Not working that hard to work on it this time, though.
Yeah, you saw him kind of offset to driver's right, staying out of the draft, and maybe just, again, maybe he feels comfortable just sitting in behind Paul Darling. So what you can do is pull up the racetrack out of the draft just to bleed off some speed. But again, look at him taking the long way around. He does not want to pass Paul Darling right now. There is no incentive for him to do that right now. He might pull alongside just in case something happens to the 155. But I think he's running the outside lane just to run the longer way around to stay behind Paul Darling. This is all strategy for Riley Thompson, and I can't disagree that it's a good idea. The question just becomes, if you make a big enough mistake where you can't use the draft to get back up, will you be able to run him back down?
And I think we might have just seen that mistake. Look at the gap between the two of them, 8 tenths, because of a little bit of a discrepancy in turn 1. So those are the kind of mistakes, like you said, that you can kind of scrub away by staying in the draft. I think it's a smart move from Thompson to not work all that hard right now. He's got 10 minutes to kill. Looking back at TCR, Ryan Kristoff has just been about a tenth or two slower per lap than Elias Roman, so I'm not sure we're going to see a battle materialize in TCR, which is a big surprise because it's been a barn burner all year. We're going to end on a fizzle more than a bang. But Elias Roman, the big question is, does he score enough points to claw back in front of Eric Mickey with that 1st to 9th deficit? I don't have enough fingers to count that math for myself, so we're going to have to wait for the race finish to see.
Yeah, I think that's the key, is we're going to have to wait to the very end and kind of let the points tabulate and drop races be accounted for before we announce who's won anything. But Darling and Thompson now separated by 0.8 of a second. Kristoff did run 0.6 better than Roman last time through, but he's not been able to do that consistently, so I'm not confident that he's actually 0.6 better than Roman right now. You see the dirt flying up through the bus stop here, Darling and Thompson. And you see, again, you mentioned how Thompson was being a little bit riskier through the bus stop, but it has helped him. You see him gain about 3 or 4 tenths that time through and building up another run on the race leader.
Yeah, and the only place that Thompson has me convinced he's stronger than Darling is in the bus stop. Whether that's because he's braver or because he's better, doesn't really matter. He gets this run every single lap, and look at that freight train he's got. Does he win the race if this is the checkered flag?
Not quite, and I think it's it was closer than I thought it was going to be at the line that time through. But again, I think it's one of these situations where Darling, you can see Thompson offsetting farther right. Usually at the very end, you'd sort of be pinching the driver down on the inside to try to make sure that you've got a short way around as well. But Thompson leaving plenty of space, running the long way around because he knows he's going to tuck back in line for turn number 1.
The battle for 3rd in class is still kind of about the same between Bressie and Chow, and through the pit stops, Carwile, Tessum, and Ty all got separated, so there's not really any battles on the track for TCR. It looks like Will Robbins might have made the same mistake.
Ken Ausiel and Lapras, this is for 7th. The 23 car of Ken Ausiel, remember he took tires on his pit stop, a big strategical blunder, and going to be buried down the order in 7th, and this is not the day that he wanted. Could have had a chance to at least win the race, if not the championship, and now he's 31 seconds back. And even if he was up front, he's not running lap times that would keep him with the race leaders.
Yeah, and I was just about to say, I think Will Robbins did the same thing. He was well into the battle with Carwile, Tessum, and Ty, and he's now well down the field, or well down the track from Benson Ty in 7th as well. So a couple of drivers making mistakes on the pit stops, whether, again, that was a forgetting to check the right boxes or whether that was a decision that didn't pan out. We'll find out, I'm sure, afterwards. But battles on the track, lead for GS, 3rd place for GS, and then we've got quite a bit of string out going on until you get back to Chris Lapras and Ken Ausiel, who we just saw exchange positions down for 7th.
The final 8 minutes of this race, it'll be about 5 laps to go this time through. About 1 minute and 55 seconds around a lap here. Darling and Thompson still in lockstep as they come across the start-finish line. Darling's got 6 wins. Thompson has 1. He wants another one across the line that time through. Would he lead? Yes, he would have by a couple thousandths of a second that time through.
Wow, on my screen it shows 0.000, so we're within the internet latency of iRacing's abilities between the two of them, but this one's going to be so close. I completely agree that you what you called out with Thompson just being patient, that's what a tie looks like right there. If this was the end of the race, we're at a tie, which with 7 minutes to go is only hopeful for a spectacular finish between these two drivers who have been storylines all season. I would say Darling, kind of the dominant performance. If you can call anybody in GS having the dominant performance, it was Darling, and his points show that. Bradley Thompson came out swinging at the beginning of the season, has been a factor all season long, but has not had either the luck or the consistency needed to perform well. Didn't get his first race win until last week, the last round that we had at Road America. That was finally broke through after being a factor every single week. Got his first win. He wants to cap this season off with double points and another win here at Daytona.
I think back to Circuit of the Americas, the very first round of the season. He fought and battled Ken Ausiel all the way to the checkers. I believe it was in race 1 there, and came up just short on that time. And it, again, just got his first race win a couple weeks ago, and he's craving a second one. And he's 3 tenths away from tasting it with 6 minutes to go at Daytona.
Last time across the line, Tony Chow was door handle to door handle with Thomas Bressie. And there they are. Look at Chow again, tucked into the draft. The straight line speed of the BMW working to its advantage here at Daytona International Speedway. They dive onto the brakes into the bus stop at the identical moment, sling both of those cars through, grabbing dirt at every apex. And Chow looks just a little bit cleaner, I got to say, as he's now going to try to keep right in the tire tracks of that BMW. Back at the front, Thompson is just as close as ever.
Yeah, and again, he's in behind Darling now as they work by Evan Adams in the number 59 TCR car. Back to third, though, across the line. Bressy's M4 is so strong in a straight line that it's able to sort of hold on to Tony Chow as they come across the start-finish. No changes there. 66 thousandths of a second between them. Chow looks to driver's right, going to try to use the brakes on the Cayman to go around the outside lane. Not quite enough to hang on there, though, that time through. There's Lapras and Houseal still for 7th.
Interesting to see Lapras was able to get back by Houseal. Again, it's just showing the raceability of that BMW at a track like Daytona. Now down onto the brakes, it's an identical move to what we just saw with Chow, but Houseal has a little bit more of a run along the outside. Is he able to hold it? They're still side by side. Whoa, so close through this kind of wiggle. Considered turn 2, now down into the International Horseshoe. Houseal inherits the inside, and he's going to use the brakes of the Cayman to pivot and put the power down. He's going to maintain that 6th place once more. Sorry, 7th place once more.
The Cayman is so agile feeling through the infield section. See, Christopher Lapras might have a little bit of left front.
Sorry, just a punt from Tony Chow into the back of Bressy on my screen. No harm, but a little bit of a crinkle onto the nose of Tony Chow's car.
For sure. Here's a look at take a look at the replay here with the last 5 minutes of action underway and into the braking zone. You see Chow get in there a little bit hot and woo, gave the 24 a big shot and damaged the rear carbon on the 124 car, but no issues. Will continue as the race leaders come across the start-finish line. This time through will be 3 laps to go for Paul Darling. He has led over 20 laps in the 29 that we've completed so far. He just has to lead 3 more, but Riley Thompson going to do everything in his power to keep him from being able to do that.
This is a little bit more of a gap than we've seen in the last couple, so Thompson needs to watch how much of that he allows Darling to have. I would say anywhere within about a half a second, he's safe. But these are the critical laps, and he needs to get closer and closer starting right now. He needs to put the 3 laps of his life together because he needs a run through the bus stop on that final lap to get by Darling. I think that's really the only chance he's got. If he makes it too soon, the opportunity is lost, and if he's not close enough, that opportunity won't present itself at all.
Yeah, I think right now he's a little bit far back for my liking. I'm not sure that he could get there with 6/10 as Lapras and Houseal again run door-to-door through the start-finish line with 3 minutes to go. This is again for 7th place, and Lapras uses the power and speed of that M4 around the outside lane, and he'll retake 7th spot from Houseal. We'll see if Kent can respond in the infield section. Big slide and drift on corner exit by Lapras.
I love this, and we have the same exact battle happening for 3rd right now between Bressy and Chow. I would love to see the Radenso Sports Car Challenge make a resurgence in 2021 or later this offseason in real-life racing, because now that we have 2 cars in this class, it's just so much more fascinating, and we have these 2 battles on the track going on that are so awesome. We could have had a whole season of this, and I hope we get another chance to do it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to watch the M4 slip and slide around, and the Cayman is so agile, kind of darting and trying to find its way around, then it gets blitzed on the straightaways. You mentioned the battle for 3rd. Well, there it is. Bressy and Chow continue their engagement. We run on board the nose of the 68. You can see the damage done to the rear bumper of the 124. Robbins racing here in Radenso Sports Car Challenge as we get down to the final 2 minutes and 2 laps of racing. Into the bus stop now for Tony Chow, chasing Thomas Bressy. Evan Adams in front of them. Bressy a little bit wide on corner entry. Chow a little bit late to get back on throttle, though.
Yeah, and Bressy can get away with that because he's got a little bit more speed, but we're at Daytona, Robbins racing, right? So a little bit of scuff between those two. Look at Thompson. He's responded to what you called him out. You said you weren't comfortable with his gap, and he said, all right, I'll close it up. And there it is, only a 10th at the line that time through. So he's got another lap to kill, waiting in 2nd, and then it's go time. He's got to make his move, and I think it doesn't happen until he's coming through the bus stop on to the last lap.
Well, you have to think Paul Darling has got to know exactly what's going on right now. He's got to be thinking, what is Riley Thompson going to do to make this pass? And if you've been in this position, which you have before if you're Paul Darling, you are going to back Riley Thompson up. Don't let him get that run on you coming out of the final corner. You need to basically slow up your entry so much that it takes Riley Thompson by surprise, forces him to overslow, and then just drive away from him on corner exit. As we jump back briefly again to Lapras and Houseal down into turn number 1. These two again having a scrapping fight as Houseal able to get the throttle down better, and Lapras you see being a lot more gentle on the go pedal this time, not kicking the back end out, but also not getting the run he needed to clear Houseal that time. Now through the International Horseshoe, he will do it through the sharp right-hander.
And it's Lapras this time who had the inside, so it's pretty much whoever gets the inside. Look at how Seal's got him, maybe a run up the outside. No, Lapras still clears him and will clear him comfortably by the chicane. Sorry, by the kink, excuse me. I was gonna say at the front, there are, by my mental math, between 2 or 3 TCR cars as lap traffic that Darling and Thompson will have to negotiate. So this may not come down to strictly Riley Thompson's speed. It may come down to getting past Will Robbins and getting past, I think, Benson Ty, if not Sarah Tessum. I think Tessum is clear, but we have probably 2 TCR cars for our leaders to navigate, and that's just another dynamic that they're going to have to figure out there. There's the gap up to one of the TCR cars. There's another car of Ty just a little further up from that.
11 seconds to go. We are just shy of getting the checkered flag, but it will be white flag for Paul Darling this time through as they come across the line. Only by just a couple feet. We'll get one more lap on Radenso Sports Car Challenge. Paul Darling, Riley Thompson as the sun sets at Daytona and on the season. The 56 car trying to claim his second victory this season. He cannot afford to mess this up here, Tom. If he wants to win this, do not force the issue until the back straightaway and that chicane.
And I think both of those TCR cars are in a factor in this battle, and they're going to be right around the time that they get to the critical moment, the bus stop for Riley Thompson. So there is a bunch of moving parts happening right here. Both of these drivers are looking forward, knowing that, and this is going to be so intense. At this moment, this is when we lean forward. I don't know if you have, I have at this point. And half a lap to go.
For Paul Darling, it's been 6 wins in 12 starts. He is just about to claim a championship trophy, but the thought is not on the trophy. It's on the 56 of Riley Thompson, right in the mirrors as they come through the hairpin back onto the NASCAR oval. Now it's 0.4 of a second as they climb the banking for the final time here, heading towards the back straightaway here, Tom. Lap traffic to contend with as they rumble towards the bus stop.
I think they're going to be okay. At least Darling will be for sure. Riley Thompson makes a mistake. He's back further than ever right now. 7/10 back from Darling, and that might be all we needed. He's going to tuck into the draft of the 503. That's Benson Ty. He uses it, slingshots around the outside. He's got a huge freight train run. He needs the run of his life through the bus stop. Watch how much dirt he's going to grab. The 56 car, the orange car, super deep, turns it in early, grabs a bunch of grass on the first one. Second one, throws it through.
Oh, he's going to have a run. He's going to have a really good run. 0.3 back. Riley Thompson firing up into 5th and 6th gear, climbing the banking. Revs climbing up into the thousands as they get up into the triple-digit speeds, 145, 150 miles an hour. Final corner for Paul Darling. It's going to be a drag race back to the checkered flag. 155, 56. Here they come. All for the marbles at the Radenso Sports Car Challenge, the final race of the season. Riley Thompson at the checkers. He gets it by a nose, and Riley Thompson is the winner of Radenso Sports Car Challenge at Daytona by 41 thousandths of a second. And he's done it as the fireworks explode on the back straightaway, Tom. What an epic battle. And Thompson did it.
Man. Perfectly played by Riley Thompson. Takes the win by 40 thousandths of a second, and now Elias Roman, having run a fairly lonely, especially by TCR standard, rounds to NASCAR turn 4, already watches the fireworks. You hear them firing in the background. He tracks out, not even in turn 4, that's NASCAR turn 2. He's got a ways to go. One more trip through the bus stop for the white TCR Audi number 99, and we wait for the tabulations of the championship points. He's not even taking any risks. Look, no dirt flying from the 99 car as he makes his way into NASCAR turns 3 and 4 to inevitably take the win at this point in the Radenso Sports Car Challenge season finale.
For Elias Roman this season, he has not yet found his way to victory lane as the fireworks explode on the back straightaway. The lights flashing on the TCR 99. Elias Roman, in his final start of the season, he'll pick up his first win of the season. Elias Roman wins at Daytona. Ryan Kristoff and Andrew Mickey will round out the podium in TCR. 5 seconds back was Ryan Kristoff. But for Riley Thompson, it was the perfect strategy, the perfect plan, and he has done it at Daytona. And it's a feeling that you've known very well, Tom, in 2019, the Michelin Pilot Challenge TCR race winner, rounding that final corner. And you're, of course, this is the sim racing environment, not quite as much on the line, but your mind is not immediately thinking about what's going on. You're just thinking about getting the car home, and once you've done that and the feelings sink in that you've done it, you've won at Daytona, and no one can take that away from you. And Riley Thompson will grab his second win of the season, and he'll celebrate at the start-finish line.
And he sits long enough to figure out where the traction control button is, clicks it off, and starts the donut show down in turn 1. Second win on 3 races at the very end of the season. Riley Thompson comes alive and will end up second place in the championship to, well, I don't know. I won't give him that yet. Riley Thompson and Ken Halseal are going to be very close on the championship for second. Paul Darling racks up 6 wins in 13 races. A phenomenal and dominant performance, top 5 and obviously top 10 in every single race for Paul Darling. He will take the championship win, but the driver of the night, Riley Thompson in the 56 car, taking the win over Darling. And Thomas Bressi, a spectacular performance, really. I'm super impressed in the BMW. Comes home third, fending off Tony Chow for the last 20 minutes of that race for the final spot on the podium.
That was a battle for the ages, and this series has done nothing but impress us week after week, day after day, track after track, and Daytona no exception. 41 thousandths of a second was the gap. There's your top 10 in Grand Sport. We'll move on now down to the next 7, the next row of finishers. Of course, Anthony Montello, Casey Shue, and Rennie Bader Jr. 11 through 13th. There's Elias Roman, Ryan Christoph, Andrew Mickey, Sarah, Tessa Benson, Tiger, top 5 in TCR. Then Will Robbins, Evan Adams. On to the next page here, Ryan Carwile, and of course the days ended early for Francois Brou. Eric Mickey, frustrating result for him. 9th place in class after having such a successful season. He had won 6 races, funny enough, same as Paul Darling coming into the night, but it wasn't meant to be for a 7th this evening. He'll finish in 9th. In class. But with all that being said, he should be hoisting a championship trophy at the end of this all. But we're not going to say anything until we come back from break. We'll get the points tabulated. We'll be right back to talk to your race winners and more. Stay with us.
If there's one place that defines American motorsport, it's here. The sandy beaches a few miles away held races for decades. It's where NASCAR was born. They need a place to race, a super speedway so fast and so huge that the cars could run flat out all the way around. So they built it. 1 million square yards of earth was moved to create the banking. The void left behind became Lake Lloyd. And 2.5 miles of asphalt created more than just one of the most beautiful racetracks in the world. It built the foundation of NASCAR. In the decades that followed, Daytona became hallowed ground. The trophies here mean more than any other. Win the 500, put your name on the Harley J. Earl Trophy. Win the 24 hours and strap a Rolex on your wrist. The banks are not always kind. They're not always fair. And while Daytona wins bring a statistical highlight to any career, it's the losses that make it seem pointless. But for every untimely ending, there is a triumphant healing. For every emotional victory, a mind-numbing realization.
Tom Gorman fighting for every inch that he can possibly get. Won the last TCR race of last year, Road Atlanta, starting things off in exactly the right style. It is victory for Tom O'Gorman and the LA Honda team.
I won at Daytona. I earned a trophy at the World Center of Racing. The checkered flag waved for me. For me, it was not the end of a career. While it may be a highlight, it is only the beginning.
It's just the best ever.
Welcome back live to Sim TV and the Radenso Sports Car Challenge, brought to you by Lazy Rocket Vinyl, as we talk with our race winner, Riley Thompson, in the number 56 Grand Sport Simsa Esports car. Riley, your second win of the season, and it was just thought and strategy that went into this win tonight, and we saw you kind of planning and plotting, but it all kind of almost looked like it was going to go away coming out on the NASCAR Oval for the final time. Was there a moment climbing onto the banking when you thought it had slipped away, or were you confident you'd be able to make up that ground?
It was about that spot where when I was kind of testing him a few laps before, that was about as far back as I could have been. But what really scared me was about 2 or 3 laps before, when we had a couple of cars in front of us, and I'm really happy that they got out of the way for us.
This race, the 60-minute enduro, is the longest one that we've done this season by about 40 minutes. So there's a lot of unknowns coming in with the tire wear, the tire strategy. How much did you debate taking tires, or was that even a question in your mind before the race started?
Not at all. I'm used to these like IMSA races and GT3 where tires can easily go the whole race, so it wasn't really an issue. There was kind of a second thought, especially when I saw how far Ken dropped back, but they definitely didn't run enough to matter at all.
And before we let you go, Tom, you got anything for Riley? I mean, we just had a blast watching you two race, Riley, so congratulations on that. And it was a lot of fun to watch, and congratulations on a really solid season and a podium points finish as well for you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for putting this on, especially Finian and Radenso, Lazy Rocket. This was a great series to race in, and hopefully we can have another season soon.
All right, Riley, thanks so much for talking. We'll see you later.
You too.
Moving on now to I'm not sure if we got Elias Roman in the house, do we? We sure do. He's just already getting up here, so we're going to move him up into the broadcast booth. Hey, Elias, you got a copy? Oh, there you are. Hey, race winner in TCR, Elias. Your first one on the season, from fourth to first. Kind of wild in TCR to start the race. Then things sort of strung out, and you're able to drive away. Walk us through your night and claiming your first victory in Radenso Sports Car Challenge this season.
I'm a little sad, just like the SCCA Esports. It took me the last race to get my first win of the season. But, it got a little dicey. I think I left Andrew enough room, but I have to watch the replay. It looked like there was net code and stuff. It just set him spinning. And then I would literally just watch Will and Eric bump draft gone bad. So then at that point, it was just me, Ryan, and Andrew trying to work together. But then mistakes by both of them caught me out in the lead, and I just basically just kept hitting my marks and just saw it to the end.
I know Tom was talking a lot about the way that the cars spread out tonight was a little bit peculiar. So, Tom, anything for Elias?
Not necessarily about that. I think just a really strong performance, and congratulations. And it looks like we do have the final points tabulated for TCR, and congratulations on officially completing the championship, finishing second place with the second highest average top 5 finish. Just congratulations on a strong performance.
Sweet. Thank you. Much appreciated.
All right. Thanks so much, Elias. Have a good night.
Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
Sure thing. We're going to move on now to our last non-champion interview. That'll be Thomas Bresci in the number 124 M4. First race in Radenso Sports Car Challenge and the last race of the season. And Thomas, we wanted to talk to you because you were kind of the only man, the odd man out with the M4 versus the Cayman out there tonight. Talk to us a little bit about your experience in this series, battling the front runners in a very different platform than those around you.
Well, I wish I had joined the series sooner because I had a blast tonight. But yeah, it was interesting. I just racing the M4. I thought, obviously, I do more of the NASCAR stuff, so I thought that would be a better platform for me. So I was waiting for that to end up on iRacing because I knew it was in the pipeline, and I've had a lot of fun with it as of late. But I mean, the setup I think was a big part of just being able to be as quick as I was tonight. My teammates and I, Tyler Hensley and Casey Shue, we worked really hard on the setup last week and just kind of did it the old-fashioned way. We didn't have the telemetry data or anything. We just kind of did it by feel and made little tweaks here and there and got somewhere that we were pretty happy with. So, but it was a lot of fun. I hate that I made that mistake in the bus stop and I got a little too far in, and the dirty air, I just couldn't really save it, and then just kind of lost the lead group. But I had a blast. I'm really thankful that Finian and everybody here allowed me to to run tonight. I had a blast racing everybody, and I know I've raced some of these guys elsewhere before, but I had a blast, and just I hope there's another season of this because I'd love to be back.
Really impressive performance for your first time out here, Thomas, and hopefully we'll have something fired up again in the near future for you to jump back in. Great job running the M4 tonight, slipping and sliding that thing around, and we'll hope to see you back.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thomas Bressi, who finished third tonight in Grand Sport. Now we'll move on to our champions. It was Paul Darling, who is the champion in Grand Sport. Eric Mickey, the champion in TCR. And of course, we've got Randy Bader Jr. here from Radenso as well. But let's start off with you, Paul. Tonight, an epic battle at the front of the field. Just lost out on the race win by 41 thousandths of a second. Very difficult to hold off someone like Riley Thompson, who was plotting to steal that from you. But reflect on your season at winning 6 races and having the fights that you did with those around you.
The season was up and down, I think. More a quick down in the beginning than just trying to stay consistent all the way to the end. Getting a few more wins under the belt. But it was a great bunch of battling with a lot of the guys up front. I know Ken was instrumental with a lot of the setups too, even though we're racing each other. There was a lot of back and forth discussions there, and there was just a lot of clean racing throughout the entire season, and I think capping it off with Riley tonight is a good way to end the season.
And I've got Tom sending me passing notes in class here behind the scenes here. He told me that you're the only driver in the series to have a perfect top 5 record, Paul. So really solid run for you this season. And just bring us back to maybe some of the races that were your favorite this season. I know VIR has to be sort of the top of the list, but what were some other memorable races from this season en route to your 2020 champion?
No, there were so many, but I think Canadian Tire Motorsports Park definitely was one of the highlights. Just, I think it was Johnston that I was fighting Ken in there too. But I just love that track, the way it flows and how the last sector can be taken side by side so easily. And that was just one of the highlights of the year.
All right, Paul, thanks so much for talking to us. Congratulations on your championship. Don't go anywhere, though. Hang tight for now as we talk to Eric Mickey, the champion in TCR. And Eric, tonight was not exactly what we hadn't planned or what we thought was going to happen for you. As you came on through, you ended up finishing 9th in class. So not the finish you were looking for, but the season still ends on a high note. You're the class champion in TCR. Take us through, as I asked Paul, take us through your season as a whole and maybe highlight some of the best moments for you en route to your championship.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be lying if I said that it didn't sting a little bit that this race went the way that it did for myself and Pilata too. Like, I think everyone involved here would have preferred the both of us being up front, battling each other all race long. So it does sting a little bit that the race went the way that it did and was kind of decided early on. But I'm going to get over that pretty quick because, even though I don't think I was the fastest or the most skilled person in this class all season long, I feel confident that I was and very proud of the fact that I was able to put together the best season overall to come home with the championship. So very happy about that. I mean, every win is a highlight, but, I got caught up pretty early thinking about points and everything like that. So, it became pretty difficult to celebrate along the way just because you're like, okay, race over, what's the next one?
Looking back at your season, it was a total of 6 wins and 11 top 5s in 12 races. Obviously, we started everything off at Circuit of the Americas, but Eric, we want to wish you a huge congratulations on an amazing season. Winning half the starts that you entered and finishing top 5 in all but one is a truly phenomenal feat. So congratulations on that, and also hang tight here in just a moment. And again, it was only a 16-point differential between you and Elias Roman, so it got a little bit tighter than maybe you wanted there at the end, but congratulations again, and just hang tight. We're now joined by Randy Bader Jr., who is from Radenso Radar. And Randy, thank you so much for joining us here tonight and for the support through this season. Of course, Radenso has been the title sponsor of the Radenso Sports Car Challenge and has offered some season-end prizes to our champions. And Randy, if you'd like to take a moment and explain to the champions what they've earned themselves this season, and also if you've got a moment to tell us what Radenso is all about before we wrap this thing up.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. I really thank you so much for hosting the series. You and Finian and Tom announcing. It's been amazing. This racing has just been probably some of the best racing I've ever seen, regardless sim or not sim. Big congrats to Paul and Eric. We're going to be giving you Radenso XP radar detector worth $249. It'll be great going to the track and just driving across the country. But thanks, and thank you to all the drivers that participated in the series. It was just a ton of fun, especially with all the times that all of our real lives have kind of taken a pause with COVID. So it's been fantastic to be a part of it. With Radenso, we're coming out with a new radar detector coming soon with AI. It's going to be called the Radenso Thea. It's going to be the first open source radar detector. It's pretty much going to take the technology of a radar detector from like a flip phone to a smartphone, to give you a kind of an example. So we're really excited for it, but stay tuned, and thanks again for everyone that participated in the series.
Randy, thank you so much for your support this season. We hope to have you guys back. Of course, enjoy your weekend and the rest of your summer. We'll hopefully see you again relatively soon, Randy, hopefully at a Grid Life event sometime soon. But of course, Randy and Radenso made this possible this season, so thank you so much for their support. And Eric and Paul, we look forward to seeing you guys test out your radar detectors on the interstate and keep yourself from getting yourself pulled over. It's I got one of those things, and they're freaking awesome. So enjoy them. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Thank you very much, guys.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to be able to say thank you guys, Kyle, Finian, SimTV, everyone involved in putting this series together. Radenso, Lazy Rocket for supporting it and all that stuff. Really cool. One of the best series and leagues I've been a part of.
So much, guys. And with that, we're going to talk to one more person before we close out. That'll be Finian DeCuna. So we'll move everybody else back out into the waiting room. And Finian, if you want to unmute yourself and kind of recap this season, because you had a huge part. You pretty much ran the entire thing, because you did. You created this whole thing, ran it behind the scenes all on your own, and I basically just worked here doing the stream. So take us through what it took to run this league on your own for all 9 rounds of the championship, and for the most part, everyone intact and cordial through the entire season, through the bumping and banging.
Realize I'm push talk. Yeah, no, I think for the most part, I think really a lot of it has to go to the drivers. It could have been a lot worse. And there were some rounds where, it was a little bit hectic, thinking of Watkins Glen, where stuff got out of control. But, after that, the racing and just on-track etiquette these guys showed was absolutely phenomenal. There could have been a lot worse incidents, but these guys really kept it going clean and green for the most part, especially racing for the lead. Some fantastic battles, especially a lot of photo finishes in this series as well.
Finian, thank you so much for all your dedication and hard work putting into this. And of course, Finian's got to move on to real world things, which is why we're sort of putting a momentary hiatus on this series. And there's always potential for it to start back up. So keep your eye out. And Finian, we wish you the best in your future endeavors. I'm saying this like I'm not going to talk to you like literally 5 minutes from now. But well, thanks again for putting this on and all your hard work and making this happen.
Definitely want to give a last shout out again to Paul and Eric for winning the championship, doing a really phenomenal job during the season as well.
All right, and with that, we're going to wrap this thing up. And again, my name's Kyle Heyer, joined by Tom O'Gorman. And Tom, as we look back on the season and reflect on what was probably the most entertaining season we've seen on Sim TV from start to finish, sports cars and really Grand Sport and TCR cars make a heck of a combo. You've got the chance to race them for basically a year and a half, and your experience racing those cars has got to reflect a little bit on what you've seen out there today. It's got to be as much fun in the car as it is to watch, because I certainly had a lot of fun.
Well, absolutely, and I not to sound like a broken record, but I just want to echo the thank you to Radenso and Lazy Rocket for the support, because we wouldn't have been able to do the broadcast on the level that we did and do the production on the level that we did without them. A spectacular job from Finian to race administrate the way that he did. I've been participating in sim racing series since I was about 12 years old. I'm 28 now, so that's been a long time, and the fact that he's put out consistent, everything from points reports and season updates and rules updates, but to stay that engaged along with penalty reports and manage the series on that high level was just a blast. And I think that reflects in why we had such high quality racing from not just a sim perspective, but an overall race quality. I think what he just said at the very end there is we had more finishes determined by photo finishes than I've ever seen in this season. I can't even count them all. So It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity to be along for the ride, especially through one of the weirder times that I've ever experienced, the weirdest time I've ever experienced. Put my energy into this and be entertained by it. So it's been a pleasure.
It's been a lot of fun, Tom, and thanks again for joining us here. Of course, this is the momentary end of the Radenso Radar Sports Car Challenge. Of course, Radenso and Lazy Rocket will continue to have a presence here on SimTV because they've just been that awesome of partners to us. Again, thank you so much to our partners and to all the drivers for making this happen. And thanks to the viewers as well for joining us here every other Wednesday or so. We'll be back with you for more racing action. The next thing on SimTV will be tomorrow night on the SCCA's official YouTube channel. That will be the Hoosier SCCA Esports Super Tour season finale from Elkhart Lake, Road America. Be tomorrow night at 9 p.m. on the SCCA official YouTube channel. Friday, we'll have the DC Region SCCA iRacing League. They'll be headed off to Suzuka. Saturday, we're off, and Sunday we'll be back with the Weekend Warriors Spec Racer Ford Championship. Monday, more to come. Thank you so much for everyone joining us here. My name's Kyle Heyer with Tom O'Gorman. We'll see you next time on SimTV.